Genesis 27 tonight. Genesis 27. Before we get started, I thought I'd share a little bit about myself. I like to make people laugh, if you didn't know that. God has grown in me the fruit of the spirit of joy, and I like sharing that with other people, so I like to joke around a bit. I also like to play pranks on people. I have loved doing that since I was a kid. Of course, when I was younger, I didn't always fully understand what I was doing. There was one time where I thought it would be just the funniest thing if I had a grasshopper that jumped out at my music teacher when she least expected it. And so she always, when we came into the music room, she always had a stand set up, and she had her big music book laid out. We were just coming in from recess, and so I had a grasshopper in my hand, and I had it in my pocket. And when we got in, I quick snuck, and I opened some pages, stuck that grasshopper in, and smashed it down, just waiting for when she would open the book up, and it would jump out at her. I didn't realize what I did. She probably was never able to get those papers, unstuck from the grasshopper dying. Of course, other times I knew exactly what I was doing. When I was in college, I liked to take coins or even just a dollar bill and glue it to the ground and sit back and watch people as they tried to take it off the sidewalk. And especially with the dollar, they'd get little pieces of it, and they get so frustrated. So some of my practical jokes were fun for other people. Some of them were not so fun for other people. But thinking back on a few, I kind of cringe and question how I could have even thought that it was okay. Have you ever done that? Have you ever played a practical joke on someone? Or was there a time that a practical joke was played on you? Yeah? Maybe a few times? Well, as we look into this chapter, we're not going to see a practical joke or a prank, but we are going to see trickery and deceit. And the question we'll need to ask ourselves is, what do we do with this chapter? What do we do with Isaac and Rebekah's actions? What do we do with Jacob and Esau's actions? Really, what's going on with this family? All right, let's look at 27. I'm going to read through the whole thing. Starting in verse 1. When Isaac was old and his eyes were dim so that he could not see, he called Esau, his older son, and said to him, "My son." And he answered, "Here I am." He said, "Behold, I am old. I do not know the day of my death. Now then, take your weapons, your quiver, and your bow, and go out to the field and hunt game for me, and prepare for me delicious food, such as I love, and bring it to me so that I may eat, that my soul may bless you before I die." Now Rebekah was listening when Isaac spoke to his son Esau. So when Esau went into the field to hunt for game and bring it, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, "I heard your father speak to your brother Esau. Bring me game and prepare for me delicious food, that I may eat it and bless you before the Lord before I die. Now, therefore, my son, obey my voice as I command you. Go to the flock and bring me two good young goats, so that I may prepare for them delicious food for your father, such as he loves. And you shall bring it to your father to eat, so that he may bless you before he dies." But Jacob said to Rebekah his mother, "Behold, my brother Esau is a hairy man, and I am a smooth man. Perhaps my father will feel me, and I shall seem to be mocking him, and bring a curse upon myself, and not a blessing." His mother said to him, "Let your curse be on me, my son. Only obey my voice, and go, bring them to me." So he went and took them and brought them to his mother, and his mother prepared delicious food, such as his father loved. Then Rebekah took the best garments of Esau, her older son, which were with her in the house, and put them on Jacob, her younger son. And the skins of the young goats she put on his hands and on the smooth part of his neck. And she put the delicious food and the bread, which she had prepared, into the hand of her son Jacob. So he went in to his father and said, "My father." And he said, "Here I am. Who are you, my son?" Jacob said to his father, "I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Now sit up and eat of my game, that your soul may bless me." But Isaac said to his son, "How is it that you have found it so quickly, my son?" He answered, "Because the Lord your God granted me success." Then Isaac said to Jacob, "Please come near, that I may feel you, my son, to know whether you are really my son Esau or not." So Jacob went to Isaac his father, who felt him and said, "The voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau." And he did not recognize him, because his hands were hairy, like his brother Esau's hands. So he blessed him. He said, "Are you really my son Esau?" He answered, "I am." Then he said, Bring it near to me, that I may eat of my son's game and bless you." So he brought it near to him, and he ate, and he brought him wine, and he drank. Then his father Isaac said to him, "Come near and kiss me, my son." So he came near and kissed him. And Isaac smelled the smell of his garments, and blessed him, and said, "See, the smell of my son is as the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed. May God give you of the dew of heaven, and of the fatness of the earth, and plenty of grain and wine. Let people serve you, and nations bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may your mother's sons bow down to you. Cursed be everyone who curses you, and blessed be everyone who blesses you." As soon as Isaac had finished blessing Jacob, when Jacob had scarcely gone out of the presence of Isaac his father, Esau his brother came in from his hunting. He also prepared delicious food and brought it to his father. And he said to his father, "Let my father arise and eat his son's game, that you may bless me." His father Isaac said to him, "Who are you?" He answered, "I am your son, your firstborn, Esau." Then Isaac trembled very violently and said, "Who was it then that hunted game and brought it to me? And I ate it all before you came, and I have blessed him. Yes, and he shall be blessed." As soon as Esau heard the words of his father, he cried out with an exceedingly great and bitter cry, and said to his father, "Bless me, even me also, O my father." But he said, "Your brother came deceitfully, and he has taken away your blessing." Esau said, Is he not rightly named Jacob? For he has cheated me these 2 times. He took away my birthright, and behold, now he has taken away my blessing. Then he said, "Have you not reserved a blessing for me?" Isaac answered and said to Esau, "Behold, I have made him lord over you, and all his brothers I have given to him for servants, and with grain and wine I have sustained him. What then can I do for you, my son?" Esau said to his father, "Have you but one blessing, my father? Bless me, even me also, O my father." And Esau lifted up his voice and wept. Then Isaac his father answered him and said to him, "Behold, away from the fatness of the earth shall your dwelling be, and away from the dew of heaven on high. By your sword you shall live, and you shall serve your brother. But when you grow restless, you shall break his yoke from your neck." Now Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing with which his father had blessed him. And Esau said to himself, "The days of mourning for my father are approaching. Then I will kill my brother Jacob." But the words of Esau, her older son, were told to Rebekah. So she sent and called Jacob, her younger son, and said to him, "Behold, your brother Esau comforts himself about you by planning to kill you. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice. Arise, flee to Laban, my brother in Haran, and stay with him a while, until your brother's fury turns away, until your brother's anger turns away from you, and he forgets what you have done to him. Then I will send and bring you from there. Why should I be bereft of you both in one day?" Then Rebekah said to Isaac, "I loathe my life because of the Hittite women. If Jacob marries one of the Hittite women like these, one of the women of the land, what good will my life be to me?" All right. So by this time, Isaac is about 137 years old. And Esau and Jacob were both about 77 years old. Ishmael had passed away about 14 years before this. How is Isaac described in verse 1? Blind, yeah, he can't see, and old. Paired with verse 2, Isaac seems to know that he's nearing death. And so he prepares to bless Esau. Now, why would he bless Esau when he knew for the past 70-some years that God would have the older serve the younger. He loved Esau best. Yeah, maybe he didn't know that Esau gave his birthright to Jacob. That could be part of it too. Yeah, this prophecy comes from Genesis 25. And he could have forgotten, right, the prophecy. But that seems unlikely. Rachel could have kept the prophecy from him as well, but that seems unlikely too. I think it comes down to what Gracious said in Genesis 25, verse 28. It says that Isaac loved Esau and Rachel loved Jacob. Seems like Isaac and Rebekah were doing something that parents shouldn't do. They're playing favorites. And more specifically, Isaac liked Esau better, and Esau is the oldest. That is, he is the one who should have received the blessing according to their culture. And so maybe he wanted to just make sure that Esau got the blessing. Birthrights and blessings were of vital importance back then in their culture. Verbal statements like blessings and curses were considered very powerful, and even in ancient times, and could even have legal force in their culture. So Isaac had set his mind towards blessing Esau. Now, there are two reasons why Isaac could have asked Esau to hunt and prepare some food. The first reason is that an occasion of passing on an official blessing to someone was a reason for celebration in their culture. And so he could have asked Esau to prepare food so that they could partake together in the food in kind of a spirit of celebration and festivity for this blessing that's about to occur. Or secondly, Isaac could be testing Esau's commitment to his blessing. If he did find out that Esau gave up his birthright for a cup of soup, Isaac could be testing Esau to see if he views the blessing in the same way as he views his birthright. It's almost a prove to me you're worthy moment. But into this situation comes Rebekah and Jacob. Rebekah immediately hatches a plan to scam Esau out of his blessing and for Jacob to receive it instead. After all, again, Rebekah favored Jacob. Now look at verse 7 for a second. Verse 7. Rebekah is quoting Isaac as saying this. Even in my translation, it has little quotes around it. It says that Isaac said, "Bring me game and prepare for me delicious food, that I may eat it and bless you before the Lord before I die." But if you go back and look at what Isaac actually said, he never said that he would bless Esau, quote unquote, before the Lord. So what do you think is going on here? Miriam, do you have a question? Okay, you're just like this. What do you think is going on here? Why do you think she did this before the Lord into her quote? Miriam does have that idea now. So that Jacob would want to do this? Yeah, maybe almost sweetening the deal. I hadn't thought of that one. It's a good idea. It could be that Isaac did say those words. They just weren't recorded down earlier. We don't always have everything that happens in the situation recorded for us. It could be that Rebekah understood that this is what was going to happen, that this blessing was going to be before the Lord, and so she just added them in herself. We don't exactly know why this is in here and not earlier. But either way, Rebekah intended to secure this blessing for Jacob. Now, did Jacob tell his mom that this was deceitful and he just objected to it, and he didn't want to steal something away from his brother or lie to his dad? Yeah. What? He's afraid he might get caught. So yeah, what is Jacob's input into this plan? Not that, oh, this is wrong, we shouldn't do this, but what? What if my dad feels me and finds out that I'm not hairy like my brother? I might get caught and I might get cursed. That's Jacob's input. That's his only objection. He doesn't want to get caught or get cursed. Jacob's looking out for himself. And he's only willing to go forward with this plan when his mom says that she'll take the curse on herself instead of him. So in verse 14 through 17, Jacob goes and does what his mom asks him to do, and his mom did her part too. And there's three components to this deception. What's the first one that we see in verse 14 and also in verse 17? What's the first component of this deception? Food. Yeah. Food prepared in a certain way, just the way that Isaac likes it. What's the second component found in verse 15? Clothing. Yeah. This isn't to look like Esau because, again, remember that Isaac can't really see. We're going to find out later that it's to smell like Esau. And the third one comes in verse 16. What is that? Yeah, the hair. Goat hair. This is specifically an answer to Jacob's input from verses 11 and 12. So Jacob will now feel like Esau. And so then, right after that, the deception is put into action. But Isaac is suspicious right away. What's his first clue that this isn't Esau? His voice. It doesn't sound like Esau, right? Isaac was expecting Esau. He had just talked to Esau and said, go and do this. And so he heard Esau's voice as recently as that conversation. And so he was expecting Esau, but he seems to have heard Jacob's voice. Now, if you're trying to do the same exact thing, if someone was questioning what you sounded like, what would you most likely do in your response to the person? Try to sound like the person? Maybe try to muffle your voice, start coughing like, I have a cold or something, and try to really just deceive the person. Maybe keep your response very short and sweet, right? You don't want to cause anything to give that person more clues that it's not you. Jacob just plunges right in and just keeps talking. He says, I'm Esau, your firstborn. Some people would have stopped right there. He says, I have done as you told me. Most others would have stopped there. Now sit up and eat my game, that your soul may bless me. Most anyone wouldn't demand of the person who is being deceived and being suspicious. But Jacob is more than just doubling down on his lie. He's quadrupling down on his lie. And still, this did not take away Isaac's suspicions, and of course it most likely wouldn't. He kind of sounds like the Little Red Riding Hood with the wolf, and pretending to be the grandmother. He asks another question. What's that second question that he asks? Yeah, how'd you get back so quick? Hunting should have taken a while, right? But look at Jacob's response. He says, the Lord your God, yes, granted me success. Now we're going to come back to that in a second, but I saved a question that we need to consider until now. And the question is, why did Rachel and Jacob think it was okay to deceive Isaac? Why do we think that they thought it was okay to deceive Isaac here? He already had the birthright. Might as well go for the blessing too. Because I used to think that they were so set on the prophecy that they're like, this is what God wants, and so this is what we're going to do. We're going to make sure that we get this blessing because God wants it that way. But then I read this, and I wasn't so sure about that. Because if you look at Jacob's answer, Jacob makes no claim that Isaac's God is his God. Jacob doesn't seem to be trying to accomplish God's will because he doesn't seem to know God yet. He says, because the Lord your God granted me success. And also, they're trying to achieve God's purposes through their own strength. I keep putting this same exact lesson up here, like on the board, 2-3 weeks in a row now. They're not learning this lesson. They keep trying to do the same thing over and over again. And this time, they're especially trying to do it through lying and stealing. Now, God has shown that he is gracious during these times and even works through these things like he did with Abraham and Sarah. But we definitely don't see Rebekah and Jacob even inquiring of the Lord here. They've just jumped right in and started deceiving. Instead, it seems more likely that Rebekah, who favored Jacob, just wanted to have the best things for him rather than Esau, and convinced Jacob to go along with it. What's the next test that Isaac gave? Felt his hands, right? Felt his neck. So Jacob's input into the plan was kind of on point, right? He's like, I know this would happen, so they covered it. And now after this test, Isaac seems a little bit more convinced, but still he knows that he hears Jacob's voice, and so he just finally asks the question point blank, are you really Esau? And Jacob tells the truth and confesses, and he apologizes and begs for forgiveness, right? No. He flat out lies again, just like he did last chapter. Just flat out lies. Sorry, Isaac flat out lied last chapter. Jacob does it here. And then Isaac gives one last test, and he does it very sneakily. If Jacob was deceiving him, Isaac was going to try and deceive him back. And so he asked him for food and then said, come near me and kiss me, my son. And why did he ask him to do that? To smell him. Yeah. It was so that he could smell him. And it was that test that finally convinced Isaac to fully bless Jacob. But you can see here that there is just no trust in this family. Absolutely none. He doubted Jacob from the first second all the way to the end and had to put him through a series of tests just so that he could get his blessing. Now look at his blessing, starting at the end of verse 27. See, the smell of my son is as the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed. May God give you of the dew of heaven and of the fatness of the earth and plenty of grain and wine. Let people serve you and nations bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may your mother's sons bow down to you. Cursed be everyone who curses you, and blessed be everyone who blesses you. Now notice in verse 29, twice we're told this. Be Lord over your brothers, plural, and may your mother's sons, plural, bow down to you. Now we only really know of Jacob and Esau, but here we have an indication that there are more than just them in their family. Isaac's blessing in verse 28 is a material blessing. He speaks of rain, of cattle, and of harvest. And in verse 29, he gives more of a political blessing. People would serve him. He would be a ruler. Cursers would be cursed. Blessers would be blessed. And again, Isaac thought that he was blessing Esau here. And so it's interesting that he purposely gave him the blessing that his brothers should bow down to him. That would include Jacob. If it was given to Esau, he wanted Jacob to bow down to him. Again, this is in direct opposition to what God said would happen. God said that the older would serve the younger. But Isaac is trying to have that reversed. Isaac is overstepping. He's contradicting God. And now I think is why God let it happen the way it did. This whole family was working in their own ways to get their own way. The faithfulness of Abraham did not really get passed down to them. Each person put their own plan into action, and yet God was guiding it all to accomplish his purposes. Let's move on to verses 30 to 40. So it's almost like a sitcom. The person just barely gets out the door and the next person comes in. That's what's happening here. Jacob scarcely leaves and Esau comes back. And notice that Isaac doesn't really put Esau through any tests, right? He already passed the first test. It took time to hunt and prepare the food. And he passed the second test. He sounded like Esau. And so look at Isaac's reaction. He knew he was deceived. What does verse 33 say? Huh? Well, even before that, what does Isaac do in verse 33? Trembled violently. Do you think that's out of anger? Do you think that's out of sadness or grief? Frustration? Huh? Upset, yeah. I mean, there's probably a whole slew of emotions that are going on here. And so he starts to ask a question. And again, he asks, who is this? But even as he asks it, if you look at his question, it almost seems like he starts to answer it. He says, who is it then that hunted game and brought it to me? And I ate it all before you came, and I have blessed him. Yes, and he shall be blessed. See, it's almost as if as he's asking this question, he's understanding what has happened, and so he's answering what's going to happen by the end of it. This person will be blessed. Yeah, he already knew. And sometimes that happens for us too, right? When we get confronted with something that surprises us, we might understand it right away, but we still have to verbally almost process it to really wrap our mind around it. That's what Isaac is doing here. And Esau's reaction comes next, and he cries bitterly. He wanted to be blessed, but he cannot be blessed. In fact, his right to be blessed in reality was forfeited a long time ago. And so we see that there was another conspiracy here. It seems as though Isaac and Esau were almost conspiring to give Esau a blessing that they knew he had already forfeited. In actuality, he was never destined to have. He gave up his birthright. But Isaac wouldn't budge. He had blessed Jacob. It was too late to take it back. But then Isaac did give a prophecy. He let Esau know what would become of him and his people. He said, behold, away from the fatness of the earth shall your dwelling be, and away from the dew of heaven on high. By your sword you shall live, and you shall serve your brother, but when you grow restless, you shall break his yoke from your neck. Now it's interesting that if you look to where these two people groups settled, the Israelites settled, of course, where the nation of Israel is. And that's called the Fertile Crescent. That's the place in the Middle East where there's plenty of water and an area to have livestock and be able to plant crops and things like that. It's a one place in the midst of desert that's good. It's the quote-unquote fatness of the earth. Esau and his people went and settled down in Edom, which was more of a desert area. Okay, has anyone heard of Petra before? Has anyone watched Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade? Okay, when he goes to that last temple in those middle of the canyons, that's where Petra is. That's where the Edomites had settled. Okay, they were in desert area. They were in mountainous area. Okay, they were, as Isaac says here, away from the fatness of the earth and from the dew of heaven. And they even did live by the sword. The Edomites were a very warring people. They became, just a warring people, and they were constantly fighting. Then look at that last part. But when you grow restless, you shall break his yoke from your neck. His yoke is referring back to Jacob. And so later on in Israelite history, when the Babylonians came in 587 and conquered Judah, the last remnant of the southern kingdom of Israel, and carried them away, it was the Edomites who helped them. The Edomites helped the Babylonians capture Israelites, hunted them down. There's Psalms recorded of how the Israelites were processing through this and how angry and bitter they were towards the Edomites for what they were doing. But again, this was the moment that they were breaking the yoke from their neck, like Isaac says here. And if you look in Obadiah, the book, You'll see that there's prophecies against the Edomites because of their participation with the Babylonians. And God says he's going to wipe them completely out. So that by the time we get to Jesus' day, they're a half people. They're the Idumeans. Herod was half Israelite, half Idumean. He was half Israelite, half Edomite. He was one of the last survivors of the Edomite race. There's a lot of history for you. Just thought it'd be interesting. Let's go to verses 41 to 46 here. What does Esau resolve to do in verse 41? Kill his brother. It's Cain and Abel all over again, right? Except Esau probably had better reason than Cain did. Anyways, and Rachel in her response to all this says that Esau is going to try to comfort himself with killing Jacob. And so Rebekah goes and warns Jacob to go to her brother Laban in Haran until Esau's anger lessens. And so she puts her plan now into action, a new plan, and goes to Isaac. Okay? She doesn't go to Isaac and just give him the truth. Hey, I want Jacob to go to my brother so that he can stay safe from Esau for a while. She tells a half-truth. What is it? Yeah, doesn't want to marry a Hittite, him to marry a Hittite. As we saw in the last chapter, both her and Isaac were grieved because of Esau. But that's not truly the reason, again, that she wanted Jacob to leave. Again, spouses, don't be like Rebekah. Tell the truth to your spouse. But these events continue into the next chapter, so we're just going to leave off there and pick it up again next time. But let's look at some questions now that we kind of have the full narrative in mind. As you look at this whole chapter, what is the hardest thing to understand about these events? Could it be Rebekah could so blatantly favor one child over another? Or how Jacob could lie to his own dad and rip off his brother? Or maybe why Isaac couldn't take back the blessing he gave Jacob? Or why could Esau also why couldn't he just have received a blessing himself? What's the hardest thing about this chapter for you? Yeah, it's not only that they loved one, but they treated the other one with at least contempt almost. Yeah, that's hard too. Yep. If I had to pick one, I'd probably go with that too. Yeah, and that's a good point to make. When Esau said that he's been cheated twice, he wasn't cheated twice. The first one, he gave his birthright away willingly. And so coming here and saying he was cheated twice, well, that's not exactly true. It's pretty obvious that Jacob was more concerned with the birthright and the blessing than Esau showed. Right.
I mean, he mentioned that, his dad was getting toward the end of his life. But it sounds like he wasn't going to try and harm Jacob until his father died.
Yeah, and so that kind of gives at least maybe some redemption to Isaac a little bit. The saying that Esau wasn't going to kill Jacob until Isaac had died. It almost shows that there was care, right, at least from Isaac to Jacob a little bit. Enough that it stayed Esau's hands. Because if Isaac truly had contempt for Jacob, more than just, more of a love for Esau, then Esau could have just gone right ahead and did that. So that's a good point. Yeah, and we'll get to that for sure. When Laban tricks Jacob quite a few times, yeah, that's I'm going to bring back some of my pranks just because of that again. Who do you hold most responsible for Jacob getting Isaac's blessing? Isaac, because he's kind of gullible. Rebekah, because it was her plan. Jacob, because he pulled it off. Or Esau, because his efforts were a little too late. The mother, because she planned it all. Right. Rebekah and Jacob? Yeah, Rebekah planned it. Jacob actually did it. That's a good point. Rebekah did say, obey my voice. Do this. Yeah. Right. That's true. Yep. And it just shows that, so Gail said that when Esau gave up his birthright, he was desperate and Jacob took him for all he could get. Jacob wasn't compassionate at all, and that's what we see in the world today. And so we can even go look back into God's word then and see, you know, the people who we later find out have great faith weren't always shining stars, right? They acted just like the world. Maybe sometimes, maybe a lot of times. Jacob was acting that way then and here. Yeah, taking things into our own hands instead of letting God take care of it. Yep. Yeah, Jacob didn't learn anything, and he had a favorite child later on too. Yep. And a favorite wife. We'll get into that soon. That was his own fault. Yeah, so I put up a little chart here just because I thought it would be interesting to see. Isaac and Rachel loved each other. Isaac loved Esau. Rachel loved Jacob. Jacob and Esau probably didn't get along all that much. I scribbled that one out. Jacob went in and got Isaac's blessing. Esau tried to do that but couldn't do it anymore. So there's just a whole lot of problems in this family. And let's be honest, you know, if we look at our own families, we probably don't want to talk about the problems we have, but hopefully we're not like this, right? Just trying to deceive each other out of things. So, huh? You needed a good attorney? Yeah, they better start looking into that, huh? All right. Well, that's all for tonight. We'll look at Genesis 28 next time. So, thanks for coming. Have a good night. Drive safe.